right, good morning, class. This is my first attempt at a classroom kind of teaching video for you guys. These won't be every day and won't be for every math lesson, but I just want to try and do something that I think might help you guys just understand some concepts. This is actually one that I wasn't even planning on teaching, but I wanted to try this with one of the videos and just see if it would work. So one area that we looked into a little bit before school stopped was factors and multiples. Factors and multiples. So I want us to do a little bit of a review because as we continue doing work for the rest of this year, we will need to use our factors and multiples a lot in order to make sense of our multiplication and division, and soon we're going to be starting with measurements and many things that we'll actually really use the factors and multiples for. So just like many other lessons, as if we were in school, we have a learning target. Now, once again, this is my practice, so I'm going to be trying some things that might be a little goofy. So our learning target today, and if you would like to read it with me like we would in class, today we are learning what a multiple and a factor are. A multiple and a factor. Now, one thing I've realized is multiple and factor are something that once you know them, oh, it seems so easy. But just saying the word doesn't always mean it's going to make sense. So we'll go over the definitions, but we will also go over some examples, and then I will also be attaching a worksheet to help you practice doing a little bit of multiples and factors. So first we're going to go with a factor. Now the reason we're going to go with a factor is because I almost think this one is the more challenging one. It's one that we hear a lot less, but we probably use a lot without even realizing. So a factor, or in Spanish, a factora, is a number that can go into another number evenly. I said go, we might also say divide. So for example, I put a picture here on the bottom of a bar model to show us that 5 is a factor of 20. Because if you were to take 20 and split it up into 5s, there would be no extras. There would be no extras. It is only a factor if there are no leftovers. Okay? So, if you're at home, we're going to practice this with a little bit of TPR. TPR being total physical response, which means you do it with your body. Don't feel silly. I'm doing it too here on the video. So, factor, a number that can go into another number evenly. Factor, a number that can go into another number evenly. Now remember, with total physical response, it's just something to help your mind understand what's going on and just kind of remember. There are many studies that show that language is better learned when you're doing movements with it. So, let's do an example of a factor, or of figuring out what a factor is, because oftentimes the questions that ask about factors will be presented like this. So they might give a number such as, let's see here, let's say 30. The number 30. Now, the number 30 is a number many of us know. And one thing that we use when we go to our factors is we think back to our counting that we know, like when you count by your 3s or your 4s or your 5s. This is where knowing your multiples ends up being so, so important. And I know it seems kind of silly. You're like, well, we haven't talked about multiples yet. We haven't in lessons before, so this is just a little review. Factors is where knowing our multiples is so important. So every number has at least 2 factors. Every number has at least 2 factors. That's important to remember. Each number's factors include 1 and the number itself. Now, I apologize if this is hard to see. I'm kind of doing my best to try and get everything on the screen while still making it visual for everyone. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. When it gets a little tricky like this, you have to know your multiples. So for example, I would go 1 to 10 and do my best to kind of quickly do my multiples in my head. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Okay, I know that I can also do 2 and 15. This is kind of a silly one because it's got a lot of big numbers. Let's see. Okay, let's go to 3. 3, 6, maybe say these with me if you can at home. 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. Oh, it does. And when I was counting, it went in 10 times. So 3 and 10. Right here, what I'm making is called a little factor rainbow. Now, I'm gonna go on to my 4s. Now, sometimes you won't need to do this. Sometimes, once you get really good at this, you won't need to check your multiples every time in your head. But just until you get to this time where you feel real strong about it, this is what I suggest you do. Now, 4. If I'm counting by my 4s, let's see what I get. Count with me at home. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32. Now, as I'm counting, I know that I've gotten past 30. I've gotten past the number 30. And I got 28 and 32, but I did not get 30 when I was counting. That tells me that 4 is not a factor of 30 because it could not go in evenly. I would have extras. If I was to take 30 cookies and give them to 4 people, everyone would not get the same amount of cookies. There would be some extras or someone would get more. It would be a mess. So we go on to 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. Oh wait, I already got that. 5 and 6. And I would continue with my 7s, my 8s, and my 9s. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go all with 7, 8s, and 9s yet. But we see here from counting, we have multiple numbers that go in evenly. There would be no extras. So you might see a question that might say, is 5 a factor of 30? And you could say, yes, 5 is a factor of 30. You might get a question that says, is 4 a factor of 30? Well, using the same thing we just did when we counted by our 4s, we know from counting, 4 did not go in evenly. It did not. So we know 4 is not a factor of 30. So if you have a piece of paper at home or a whiteboard or anything, I'm going to give you guys a little practice problem and a few minutes of think time to do it. Now, this is the part that I think is going to be a little goofy because normally, if you guys were with me, I'd be going around the carpet and checking in with you guys. But I can't do that, so this is going to be a little goofy where I'm just going to be kind of hanging out. So I'm going to ask a question. On here, I'll write the question, and then you are going to try and figure it out in your head, or on your board, or on your paper, or in your head, either one. So the question that I'm asking is 3 a factor of 15? Is 3 a factor of 15? If it helps to get in the routine, I know we should put a little thumb up on our chest when we know. Okay. Gonna give you about 10 more seconds. All right. I was trying to figure that out. What I would do is I would count by my 3s. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. I know that 3 times 5 is 15. Therefore, is 3 a factor of 15? Yes, it is. Now, my friends, factors are the challenging part. We're going to move on to multiples. Multiples are a little bit more simple because these are things we've actually been talking about for a long time now. We've been talking about how it's so important to know your multiples. We use multiplication charts. We use all kinds of things like that. So, by definition, a multiple is, or multiple, I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, but the product of two factors. So, for example, you can see the multiples of 6 are 6, 12, 18, 24, because 6 times 1, 6. 6 times 2, 12. 6 times 3, 18. So, when you are doing when you are finding your multiples, that is, what you can do is you can basically, it's like repeated addition. It's like if I was to say 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, but the difference is it's another form of skip counting. I'm using a lot of words that we used in the beginning of the year because I think they're going to help you connect. So, for TPR, multiple is the product of two factors. Now, it seems kind of weird, but if you remember, factors go in evenly. So, multiple, the product of two factors. Because that helps us remember that it's the answer, or it's the product, the multiplication answer, of two numbers that go in evenly. Awesome, guys. So, some of our basics when we are doing this is just counting by our numbers. So, for example, if we were going to do our 4s, like we had talked about, say these with me in your head, or at home if you would like. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, and 40. Usually we stop at about the number times 10 just because we think it just for the sake of time we're going to do that. So then when you see a question that might say, is 32 a multiple of 4? You can count by your 4s and say, well, let's see, 4, 8, 12, is 32 oh, 32 is right there. So yes, 32 is a multiple of 4. If someone was to say, is 21 a multiple of 4? If you're counting by your 4s, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. I don't even see 21 in there. So 21 is not a factor, or is not a multiple of 4. So let me give you one more, just little practice problem to think to yourself. Is 31 a multiple? Now remember, it's important to remember multiple of 5. Is 31 a multiple of 5? I'm going to give you a few minutes to think. If you know. All right. If we wanted to figure this out, we would start by counting by our 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. I did not get 21 or 31 when I was counting it. That tells me that 31 is not a multiple of 5. As I give you guys the worksheet, do the best you can. I'm not looking for perfection. I just want you to try the best you can. Ask me in Seesaw if you have any questions. Email me, touch base with me, whatever you need to do. I miss you all. I hope you are enjoying your first beautiful sunny day of this week.